One thing about the book that we're going to review today is that it has one of the clearest voices that I have heard in a long time. Writing is a lot about like giving the right piece of information at the right time, and what a lot of writers do is that we use a lot of literary techniques, we use a lot of ambiguity to hide information, to send the reader into spirals, to create suspense. However, this was one of those books where there were not a lot of literary techniques peppered into it. My name is Shama Nelson Godos. Welcome to the book replay. And today we're going to be reviewing Not So Terrible People by Nana Sule. This is one of the literary works with the clearest language that I've read this year. So if this is your first time here, here's how our reviews go. First, we have the pre-ramble where I just like rant to get myself into the mood for a book replay. And then we move into the short review for people that have coffee that cannot stick around for like the half hour. And then we have the long review where I encourage writers, literary enthusiasts to stick around for. And then there's a discourse where I express, my personal opinion. So feel free to skip to any part of it. Feel free to leave the video at any point, but if you finish the video, I would love it. If you like the video, I would love it more. If you share the video, you're basically just giving me candy. And if you subscribe, I'm going to thank you. So now let us move into the short review. So Not So Terrible People is a short story collection of 11 stories from Nana Sule. Now, this particular set of short stories are set in the same universe, in the same country, and they are interlinked. Like you have characters from one story appearing in another story. As you go down these 11 stories, you have shifts in perspectives, and these perspectives cut across like a wide swathe of narrative styles, emotions, and events, and they all serve to deepen the drama in this book. Now, make no mistake about this book. Yes, it is 156 pages, but Nana Sule does a lot. First thing she does is that she creates a puzzle. Call this a charcuterie board because there are pieces from each of the stories that you have to put together to get the plots. The stories in this collection are cohesive and they all wrap around a particular plot. They explain one another, they verify facts, they serve up different pieces of the same plot, and each new story takes you further and at the same time deeper into the plot while also being able to stand on their own. These stories on their own are just stories that you can read and move on. You can find them in like a literary magazine because they're immensely self-contained. When you put all of them together, when you experience these stories together, depending on the order that you even experience these stories, the experience on how you get to that plot will be different. And it's not just that, there are also a lot of Easter eggs buried inside this novel. There are some facts that you may not know. There are some questions that you may ask, but the answers are inside here. Without peppering the story with too many literary techniques and transmitting her message as clear as possible, the author can still create mystery, suspense, and still keep us wanting more while still giving us everything that we need to understand about the story. It gave me space to form my own theories, and trust me, I overthought everything to imagine what will happen in the characters' lives after the stories. So I've spoken about clarity, but also the writing is efficient. There is no sentence out of place, and even created bones for me to write my own fan fiction based on the universe that she put here. But what really touched me about this novel was the masterful structural development. The editorial team here really cooked. There is a neatness around the presentation of ideas and how we progress from event to event. And there is also the mark of the sheer potential that this book has when it comes to sequels and expanding the storyline as well as character development and world building. Now, I dive into detail about the structure of this book in the long review. Yes, this is marketed as a set of short stories, but as far as I'm concerned, I can class it as a novel. It's just that the narrative style is completely different. It's a narrative style that I can find in a book like Clinking in the Bardo, where we have what I would call a staggered narration, and it's something that was masterfully done here. Now, while on her tour, Nana Sule dropped by the Leopard House for a conversation with me. I got to run all my theories about the book with her, so you can watch that conversation and hear from the horse's mouth about all of my theories about this book. And she shared a little bit about herself and the things that inspired the creation of this book. If you're leaving this video at the short review, you should make your way back to the conversation if you haven't seen it yet. Most of those questions are what inspire some of the things that I have to say here. This is really good. I think everybody should read it. Like, get a copy. It's just small. Some of the stories here are less than 2,000 words. Good reading experience, good book. and I can't wait to see the next thing from the author. So yeah, this will be the end of the short review, and if you have something to do, go and do it, or check out the conversation, because now I'm about to head into the long review where I dive into the literature that happened here. So now, Nana Sule is a writer, journalist, communication strategist, event host and planner, and an entrepreneur. Now, she has worked in marketing, in journalism, and you find her paw prints all over the literary scene in Kano. Now, she has been published in quite a number of literary magazines. You have the Agbowo, you have Isele, and last year she won the Savage Prize for Creative Nonfiction. Now, Not So Terrible is her debut novel and is as good a starting point as any. For more about Nana, you can refer to the conversation I talked about, because we really dive into the life and times of this wonderful author. I want to tell you my adventure with this cover. So, I wasn't really happy about the cover or the name of this work the first time I encountered it. I thought Not So Terrible People was too pedestrian, and I thought that these icons on this cover, you can find them in any stock photo website. I thought this halo was a little too basic. I mean, I can put it together in Figma. It will not be this fine, but it can work. However, I read the book, and when I came back, I looked at this cover and I was like, I was wrong, because this cover contains almost all of the clues that you need to access the story. This cover is basically the entire story just displayed in picture format. If you carry 2 copies of this book and put side by side, you'll find a perfect symmetry. I think I did that on my screens once, and it looked really good when tiled together, and it's currently my wallpaper. When it comes to the structure of this story, you will see how this cover actually holds a lot. So yeah, this cover 4.5. I really, really love it. For narrative, let's start with premise. Now, the title simply serves up the premise of this book. And the premise of this book is that people are not so terrible. And the author achieves this by holding the actions of these people, listening to their stories, and giving us witness from several perspectives. The journey to making your decision on the characters would differ with the sequences of how these stories approach you. But people not being so terrible is not all there is to this book. There is a much bigger where people are smack in the middle. Just like Not So Terrible People is smack in the middle of the cover. Now, the narrative of this book winds down through 11 stories, each one standing alone on its own, like something you find in a literary magazine. Yet, when they are put together, they form a large overarching plot that you cannot see unless you have witnessed individual pieces of this story. While you have the lives of people and their struggles, there's a woman who her husband is missing when a train is raided, and there's another woman who cannot return home, and then there's a man that missed that train and is trying to run back home to go and comfort his wife, because she will be, of course, distraught that he's not around. Now, these stories are going on, but around these stories are the machinations of supernatural beings of unthinkable power, and these ones also have their own agenda. This story occurs across different dimensions and settings, across the 7 heavens, hell, the world of the jinns, and Earth, of course. Yes, there are supernatural beings in this story, and they are looking at the edges of the actions of these people, just like you have the wings of the angels at the edges of this cover. God, this cover strikes again. Now, that's just one thing about the structural delivery of the story. When it comes to the arrangement of the 11 stories themselves, this is the sheer work of genius. Now, the first 5 stories detail the day-to-day human struggles of the people, with minimal supernatural influence, seemingly. With the first story, Amal, we witnessed a woman talking to an angel, giving an account of her life as in the Islamic tradition of judgment. Now, this story serves to plunge us into the supernatural nature of this book, but not forcefully. The next story, Onwanyi, settles into how the supernatural is stitched into the daily lives of the people in this book. It is about a woman who has died only once. Now, the next 3 stories happen in the town of Kurmi, where a woman mourns her missing husband with her friend, and then a community madman mourns the death of an old man. When we get to the 6th, Malaika, it is completely different, because Malaika is about the therapy session of an angel who has fallen from the 7 heavens. That is when you begin to see the huge scale of this story. It's a lot different in narrative style, tone from the other stories that we have, because those other stories are human, meanwhile Malaika is an angel, so definitely the story is going to be different. Through Malaika, you can see how this world expands. You start to see the rules, you start to understand that, okay, these people are really not alone. Their actions might be influenced by something bigger than them. There are 5 stories before Malaika and 5 stories after. So what happens is that Malaika serves like sort of a mirror, cutting your human experience to give you like some sort of reprieve, and gives you like a new way to approach the stories before it and the stories after. In fact, if you read Malaika first, the entire experience changes for you, I dare say. It reminds me of this movie Kaleidoscope, where there were 8 stories and its narration was staggered. I think Nana Sule did it better. Now, the story after Malaika is named Ometere, and it's about a woman who is trying to fix her breaking marriage. The one after that is about Ozevehe, the man who is running back home to go and comfort his wife. And he's on his way back home when he now encounters something strange on the road. Rahinat listens to a wonderful story. Her friend recounts to her something that he experienced that was crazy. The next one after that is Oiza. It talks about a girl who is battling the neglect from her parents. And the last story, Lila, is about a woman who can see Jinn. Now, as you progress down these stories, it gets more supernatural and it becomes really amazing. It just really creeps up on you. Like at my first experience, I was just reading and I was just like, okay, human story, Malaika, okay, 4 stories. Oh God, these people are so bad people. And then when I got to the end, I spent 20 minutes just strolling. And then I came back and the first thing I did was I opened the book and I started again. The lines that seemed very simple started to acquire new meaning as I got new context. It was a really, really wonderful experience. I have read this book a number of times again and again and again because it's really so easy to read, because you just have stories starting and stopping, stories starting and stopping. So you are not lost in the sense that once you start a story, it's not very hard for you to finish it. I find that narration is better for people who cannot read straight. So if you're not the type of person that can sit down and read a book for 4 hours, come and carry this one, come and carry this one. 20 minutes, one story. I experienced a lot of emotional depth in this book, and the staggered narration did well to allow Nana hide the Easter eggs that she needed to hide. As for place and setting, the story happens around 3 dimensions, like I said. The supernatural things serve the story. It's not like the other way around. All of the world building happens inside the story. We don't pause to, do some exposition to develop the world. We experience this world as it happens. We experience this world as the characters try to achieve their aim. And I think that was really efficient world building, because if there was some exposition about all the things that were happening inside this world, we would have had probably extra 100 pages. And I find that very, very refreshing. Nana writes this book with a language that is very, very contemporary. It's not heavy-handed like a lot of the tough, chewy literary fiction that I will promote any day. Readers treated to a variety of styles, and she just shows off how good she is. The first person, second person, you have third person, you have the poetic style, which I talked about in Malaika. Sometimes she goes distant from the story, sometimes she's really close while maintaining the whole omniscience perspective. And while she's also showing off, the way these stories are written serve to present that story in the best light. Like the story of Ohunene, for instance, is a diary entry where we dive deep into the panic of a woman who thinks she has lost her husband. She doesn't know where he is, and just before he left, things were not really good with them. So we are locked in her mind. When we go down the book and we meet her sister, we realize several different things about this woman, that she's actually living a gilded life, that the suffering that she's suffering, it's not as if it's not valid though, but she has it good. When I was chatting with Nana Sule, she said that was the only way the stories could come out. And I was like, yeah, somebody's subconscious was working overtime, because that was just really, really good. The language here is very, very accessible. I worry that it was too light and that I may not enjoy it, because I enjoy esoteric things. I enjoy novels that when I read, I have to go outside and go and think. I enjoy novels that I have to drink with tea. I enjoy this novel, even though it doesn't read like most of the things that I champion, like, high literature and stuff. This was incredibly good. What this simple style did was that it pointed blazing arrows to its plot points, pointed arrows to its Easter eggs. The fact that she did this without employing ambiguity was just really, really good. The editors paid good attention to the text, because while Nana conceptualizes the story, it is sharpened, the fluff is removed by the editing team. One of the works of editors is to remove obstacles so that the reader is able to access the writer's message. And in this book, there are literally no obstacles to accessing the message. Now, the tone of the writing also varies widely. Like with Amal, it's funny, she's very conversational. Rahila, which is like my best story inside this collection, where we get into the emotional depth of what self-sacrifice and love means. And that story actually primes you to get into 2 Malaika, where we are talking about mental health, and this angel is busy just talking about his problems. Raila and Malaika are like two heavily emotional stories here, and just having them side by side is just like chef's kiss. In my conversation with Nana, she said Kalteve, the priest of the literary scene in Benue, was in charge of structure, and I think that's one of the best arrangements of short stories I've seen. So yeah, shout out to Cal, man. This was good work. In general, the voice inside this story, like I've said before, is one of the clearest you'll ever come across. The clarity is stunning. I don't know if you've ever listened to Nana read.
By the time I finish telling you the story from the very beginning, you too will see why I must return. Why this death cannot stand. Why you cannot collect the soul. At least not yet.
The musicality of her voice, the cadence, that's like how she goes up and down, the spaces that she leaves between the words and before she pronounces them, all of those qualities are what she bequeaths into this text. It's quite soft. I finished book multiple times because I want to get into the subtext. But the reason why I finished this book is because I enjoyed it so much I wanted to experience it again. She's an exciting new voice with stunning clarity. Not every time mystery. Sometimes let the reader get to the message. Trust your story. Trust your research. Now for the characters. Now in the book Replace Interview with Nana Sule, we discuss these characters at length. We talk about their inspirations. I run a lot of my theories by her. I find Nana's ability to zone in on what makes people very striking. I cannot imagine the amount of research and how long her character Bible is. Characters are so consistent that I am able to project what they will do in the future. Like there's a character that has been watching one rabbit since. The only thing that can save that rabbit from being eaten is something supernatural. This is a heavily character-based story. So each story is based around the character. The story is even titled after the characters. And in these stories, we're examining like events, we're examining the actions, and we're examining the nurturing of these characters. Now, we are either wearing their lenses, speaking to them, or listening to them. These characters explore like the duality between like being terrible and being good, what it truly means to be terrible, what it truly means to be good are some of the questions that I was able to answer. One of the things that I think she also infers is that when given a chance, people might not be so terrible after all. Within the context of this novel, she really proves that. Caveat here is that some people who are just terrible are just psychopaths. And I really find that message to be refreshing. It is a call for us to forgive and listen to one another. Before we break off our connections with people, we should try and understand why they did these terrible things, not just cancel the people that we call friends and family. It also requests empathy. It requests forgiveness. We talk a lot about this in that conversation. And I think that these ideas are what is at the core of the character study. The interiority of these characters is so rich that it does feel as if I'm learning how to write characters again. We treat the interior lives of women, we treat family dynamics. There's a lot of Islamic cosmology. The literary merits of Not So Terrible People is in the structure of this novel. Of course, for language, it is consistent. I think the beginning is fantastic. I think the narrative is very, very cohesive. And the way it proves its premise is just wonderful, But the real mind-boggling thing about this book is what it does with structure. On the paint of the structure, what we are doing is that we are diving around the human stories woven around the train attack. Like we are exploring humanity, we are diving into drama, but underneath that paint, Nana weaves a far much bigger plot, one that actually crosses universes. It is a plot where like a faction of supernatural beings have concocted a plan across several dimensions, across several generations of human living to cause the reincarnation of a very powerful angel. So the train attack is possibly just a tiny aspect of that plot. There are several other things that have happened while these supernatural beings have been making their machinations. I like how it has been hiding inside the shadows of the human stories. And this structure is arranged in such a way that it is when you get to the end of the story that you understand just how deep this plot is. I find what was done with the arrangement of these 11 stories, I find it very brilliant. I find it cheeky, and most of all, I find that it is incredibly intentional. Like it is the art form of staggered narration. When I say staggered narration, is where instead of narrating like a story on a steady level, you sort of like give us in pieces, and these pieces are not the same piece every time. Sometimes you give us a huge piece of the story, sometimes you give us a small aspect of the story, sometimes you just give us a sentence. I think The Incredible Dreams of Karapatakaskos, which I have reviewed earlier, does the same kind of narration where the plot is delivered in pieces over and over and over again. Why those other stories might break your head and you might be at one point like, what is going on? This one, even a baby can follow it. Now, when I look at this as a novel, I see the book zero of what could be a fantasy series, a trilogy or a tetralogy. This is like the Sword of Destiny in the Witcher series, in the sense that we have like several short stories that have happened before the main saga happens. The world that was built within the confines of these short stories, like the desires of the characters, what they want to achieve, and what we learn about like each dimension through these characters, holds the seeds for a saga that can span centuries. Because giving birth to a powerful angel, all of the pieces that you have to put together is going to take a while. And considering the fact that plot inside this book lasts for 80 years, so we have 80 years worth of deep human drama to explore. I mean, I said the trilogy before. If you ask me, we can get 7 books. As an overthinker, after reading this book and after writing my review, I was able to form the bare bones of a trilogy for fan fiction that I could write just out of this small work. Like, this thing can be adapted. Like, you know, all of those Netflix anthology series, this could be something that they could adapt. Filmmakers, think of Not So Terrible People. This can only come from an intense amount of research. Me, I want to see the binder, because everywhere you look in this book, there's fertile ground for a story. Is it about Onwanyi's childhood? Is it the full scope of Amal and Rhoda that we want to hear about? Is it about Ohunene and her husband Ozovehe? The richness of the human drama. It's not just world building, sci-fi, fantasy stuff that we are playing with. We're also playing with drama, and I can tell you that there is a lot of potential for this to become like heavy themes. And one more thing I find about the narrative style here, which is staggered, is that it feels akin to how we consume stories on social media in this post-truth world. Because when something happens, I go to Twitter and I'm just like reading articles upon articles, or I go to Google and I'm reading several news reports. Each one of these news reports carries a truth. They carry their own particular frame because everybody is trying to push their own agenda. It's when you are done, or when I am done consuming all of this content, that I sit down and I sort of like understand fully what went on from the different perspectives narrating it. With social media and with the internet, everybody is talking, everybody is telling their own story, kind of like what's happening here. Everybody gets a say in what happened. At the end of all of this, I'll say, well done to Nana Sule again. Well done to the editorial team. I think this is a resounding success. And as this is her first novel, I cannot imagine what she's going to produce after this, because this is phenomenal. I mean, no pressure. If she decides to disappear for 12 years or after 25 years and not write anything, I'm willing to wait, because I would really, really like to hear more from the author that wrote this. Now, if you want to start reading literature, like you want to start reading Nigerian books, and you're looking for something light, airy, and easy to read, I think this should be the book that you should read first. The style is very current, because the way we consume stories now is what Nana depicts in this book. This book is accessible, it's brilliant, and it has like immense clarity. That is an experience that first readers want, something that is just easy to chew and something that actually blows their mind, because this whole thing plays out like some sort of crazy thriller novel. I love it. Like, I love this book so much that I even painted my nails. I would have borrowed my copy to you, but I have like 2 signatures from the author, so this book is not leaving my library. So I guess that's all I have to say about Not So Terrible People. I really enjoyed writing my review for this book. I really enjoyed having a conversation with the author. I also really enjoyed talking about it. That's it. That is the end of my long review for Not So Terrible People. Thank you so much, Nana Sule, for this book. Like, it was awesome. It was really awesome. Now, to close with a flourish, now I am rereading The Incredible Dreams of Karabadakaskos. I think this is the 4th time I am reading this book, and this is because by the 2nd of August, we will be having I'll be having a conversation with the author of The Incredible Dreams of Karabadakaskos, Umar Sidi Abubakar. We are celebrating 1 year of Karabadakaskos. The book has gone really far. It was in Dublin Literary Prize long list, and it also made it to the African Book Festival in Berlin. It is really a phenomenal piece of work. I really like what's happening with Nigerian literature, that amidst all of the commercial things that we write, there are still unique literary works that, people can nerd out to. It makes me so happy. I'll tell you people all about the conversation on the book replay. I hope that we'll be able to at least host like a piece of that conversation on this channel for those of us that watch. So that's one thing I am looking forward to. So yeah, this has been the book replay for today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Bye bye. Have a great day.